People often have this misconception of traveling, more specifically traveling alone, that tells them that they'll find themselves while doing so. I think we as young people especially have been entranced by social media and YouTube vlogs to make us think that it's a revolutionary experience, that we'll find our place in the universe or our purpose. And that really just isn't true. Is it pointless then? No, it definitely isn't. As someone who recently just did travel alone, I can tell you that a lot still happens. I left my home of Boise, Idaho, where I am now, and traveled to southern Utah to see some national parks. I probably would have stayed longer too if it hadn't been for the fact that it decided to snow in the middle of April. I definitely didn't come home with a new sense of purpose or anything, but I did learn a lot. Here's what I did learn. I've always been a pretty financially conscious person. As a kid, I remember going to the gas station with $5 and trying to see the best way I could make that $5 stretch so I could get the most from my money. And honestly, I still do that even when shopping at the grocery store. But I didn't find myself doing that much on this trip. It happened occasionally when I went to the store to get food, but I never blinked once when having to spend money on park entry fees or parking or gas, which ideally I should have. When I was in Zion, I spent $30 for parking in Springdale, which is the town outside of Zion, when I was already paying $35 to get into Zion, and parking is free once you pay the park entry fee, and I could have gotten parking at the Visitors Center if I would have gotten there like 30 minutes earlier than I did. But I didn't even bat an eye, and I usually am someone who, if parking is too expensive, I'll just park further away, even if it means I have to walk more. And I didn't do that this trip, like, at all. Experiences are worth the money you pay for them. Sure, if you can pay less, do it, but don't be afraid to spend money on something that isn't tangible, like I know a lot of people are. I read a quirky little quote recently that went something along the lines of this. Do things that make you forget you even have a phone. While on my trip, I was on my phone probably a bit more than I should have been, mainly because I was recording footage for this video that you're watching right now. And of course there were points where I had to call my parents as to not go like completely insane from not talking to people. But for the most part, I got to experience life without the intrusion of technology. Since coming back, I've tried to lower my usage of social media and like binge watching YouTube or TV because it really is for the most part pointless. Obviously there's things we can learn or experience on YouTube or watching a movie, so they do have a purpose. But when it comes to social media though, it's completely pointless. It really only seeks to fry our dopamine receptors in exchange for some content we probably don't even like and makes us feel terrible. In our very social society, there is a real stigma behind doing something alone. I remember a conversation I had with a friend of mine a year or two ago where she was telling me about all the stuff she was doing and how she basically had done it completely alone. I remember being shocked at that, and I asked her how she did it, which the response was pretty much, you just do it. And weirdly, that's true. It's a lot easier said than done, though, I will admit. This obviously wasn't the first time I did something alone. I had gotten used to going to see movies by myself on Tuesday because that was my day off, and it was also the day that the theater offered only $5 movies, so I was somewhat used to it. But this was the first day I had spent 4 whole days by myself, and I really was by myself. Often I see these traveling YouTubers or influencers talking about making friends along the journey, and that's true, but it really only works when the infrastructure is there in the first place. I wasn't staying at a hostel. I made my own food. I didn't go out to eat. I drove by myself. And although I kept my AirPods out and my phone down in an effort to experience the world around me and the beauty of the nature, the conversations I had with people were pretty short. I never got beyond like a 2-minute maybe interaction. They were what Tyler Durden referred to in Fight Club as single-serving friends. I was, for the most part, completely alone. And honestly, it wasn't that bad. It was nice to do trails that my friends or family would have moaned and groaned about doing and never having to ask them or convince them to do them. And getting up early and rushing out to do everything. And I know my family would have never done that. They're much more of a lay back and chill vacation type of people, which is something I can respect as well. And it is fun, but I'm definitely more of a get out and go type of person. And there was something very freeing about doing things alone and not having to convince others or rely on others to do something. I just did it. This last lesson may be a bit of a contrast to the previous one, but it's probably also the most important one. And that's how important people really are. Recently, I had been struggling in my relationships, most importantly with my girlfriend. and was really starting to become unappreciative of our relationship, to the point that we had gone on a break and were technically broken up when I went on this trip. I had been so focused on my future and getting a good career and whether to go to college or not that I had just become unappreciative of everything around me. Being alone and getting to see another part of the country really gave me an appreciation for what I had. You often take things like a bed or a kitchen for granted. Most importantly, though, you take people for granted. And it isn't until you are without those things and people that you really appreciate them more than you would otherwise. I mentioned a moment ago how I was having a really hard time in my life when I went to Utah, and that was mainly because I was so focused on what the future held for me. I had so many questions, and literally none of them got answered. I still wonder if I'm going to go to college. I still question my purpose in life and what my calling really is. And I certainly didn't find myself, as they say. But to be honest, I didn't really think I would going in. Purpose isn't found, it's created. And this trip helped me realize that all the more. Traveling won't fix all your problems, and it will help you find your purpose. But it definitely does make you appreciate what you have in life more.